For decades, this aerospace giant seemed completely untouchable. I mean, these were the people whose engines won the Battle of Britain, the very same company that powered the dream of supersonic commercial travel. At first, everything seemed normal. They were on top of the world. But then, in 1971, something catastrophic happened. The company suddenly and violently collapsed. They were completely broke. The British government was forced to step in, nationalizing them and violently ripping their aerospace division away from their luxury car operations. To the outside world, it looked like the absolute end. But what happened next shocked the entire aviation industry.
Welcome back to Airflight Space, where we explore aviation events, air safety investigations, industry developments, and the stories shaping our skies. Today we're taking a closer look at a story attracting major attention in aviation: the literally impossible resurrection of Rolls-Royce. I mean, how exactly does a company go from a catastrophic, humiliating bankruptcy to completely dominating the global skies? Today we are investigating a masterclass in corporate survival. To truly understand the sheer scale of the problem here, you have to look at what they were up against in the 1970s. Put the bankrupt, struggling Rolls-Royce next to the dominant, heavily funded U.S. giants like Pratt & Whitney and General Electric. It wasn't even close. Rolls-Royce looked like this lumbering, out-of-ideas behemoth that was completely unable to keep up. The American Titans had the capital, they had the momentum, and they had the market share. For Rolls-Royce, surviving against these Goliaths seemed utterly, completely impossible. But then, something highly unusual started to unfold. You see, the rescue of Rolls-Royce didn't come from some billionaire investor or a massive permanent government bailout. It came from inside the house. Enter Sir Ralph Robbins. He joined Rolls-Royce way back in 1955 as just a young engineering graduate apprentice. Over the next 6 decades, he would rise through the ranks to become the company's longest-serving employee, and incredibly, the single man who would ultimately save the entire company. Now, Robbins didn't just casually climb the corporate ladder. He sprinted up it when the stakes were at their absolute highest. By 1978, he takes the helm as commercial director. By 1984, he's managing director. And then he pulls off this massive maneuver, leading the company to a stock market flotation in 1987. He was executing these rapid, incredibly high-stakes strategic moves just to secure some crucial early lifelines. It was a literal race against the clock to keep the lights on. So how do you actually generate cash during a highly traumatic era for heavy industry? Well, as commercial director, Robbins aggressively went out and secured massive contracts from airlines like Cathay Pacific and British Airways. But he also knew something crucial. He couldn't survive in isolation. So he formed International Aero Engines, partnering directly with Pratt & Whitney to develop the V2500 engine. This was a brilliant move. It kept Rolls-Royce alive in the narrow-body segment, powering around 50% of the Airbus A320 family. But this was only the beginning. Sure, those early moves stopped the financial bleeding, but wait, you have to ask yourself, was this really enough to actually secure their future against GE and Pratt & Whitney? The short answer is absolutely not. A tiny narrow-body foothold wasn't going to win the broader aviation war. The real test, a massive, terrifying financial gamble, was yet to come. If this next move failed, Rolls-Royce was finished for good. In 1988, Robbins bet absolutely everything on the launch of the Trent 700 engine for the Airbus A330. It was the ultimate wide-body gamble. They weren't just building a slightly tweaked or improved engine. No, they were introducing a revolutionary new design that had to work flawlessly from day one. The tension inside the company was off the charts. If the airlines didn't buy into the Trent family, the company would collapse all over again. And this time, there would be no rescue. And this detail changes everything. This is where the engineering gets incredibly fascinating. You see, the secret weapon of the Trent family was its distinctive 3-shaft architecture. While competitors traditionally used 2 shafts, Rolls-Royce engineered 3. By allowing the fan, the compressors, and the turbines to each rotate at their own optimal speeds, the engine became shorter, stiffer, and massively more efficient. It was an absolute engineering masterstroke that would eventually birth the legendary Trent XWB for the A350 and the Trent 1000 for the Boeing 787. But just as the Trent program was finding its wings, the situation escalated. The early 1990s brought a brutal global economic downturn. Aviation orders basically stalled overnight. The tension inside the boardroom was immense, especially because the break-even point on this massive Trent program was still at least a decade away. They were burning cash fast. Robbins, who is now chief executive, had to make some of the most difficult decisions of his life. The numbers we're looking at here are just staggering.
A workforce of 36,500 people violently slashed down to 22,200. To keep the company afloat while waiting for the Trent to become profitable, Robbins led a deeply painful cost-cutting program, terminating over 14,000 jobs. It was an absolute gut punch to the industry and a dark, highly emotional period. The sacrifices required to keep Rolls-Royce alive were absolute and severe. But Robbins knew that simply cutting costs wouldn't guarantee long-term survival. He needed a permanent strategic shift. First, he completely changed their business model, treating the aftermarket, things like engine repairs and maintenance, as a major continuous profit stream rather than an afterthought. Then, he aggressively expanded internationally. He acquired Indianapolis-based Allison to break into the highly lucrative U.S. defense market, and he set up Rolls-Royce Deutschland. This brutal restructuring, combined with fierce expansion, finally began turning the tide. Keep watching, because the final detail explains everything. The storm finally began to clear. So what was the real-world impact of this 40-year rescue mission? What happened next permanently altered the landscape of global commercial aviation, because this wasn't just a simple financial recovery, it was total, undeniable market disruption. The real-world result is undeniable. Over 6,000 Trent engines have been produced to date, and that number isn't static. It's growing by about 250 units every single year. Because of the Trent family, Rolls-Royce completely transformed. They went from a bankrupt, nationalized failure into one of the two dominant players in the 21st century widebody engine market. It is a staggering, historical victory.
When the Trent 700 was first unveiled 38 years ago, Sir Ralph Robbins made a very bold statement. He said, "I see no reason why Rolls-Royce could not be manufacturing Trent engines in 40 years' time." Given that they've built over 6,000 of them and completely dominate the skies today, that 38-year-old prediction actually seems wildly modest. His foresight was completely unparalleled.
So what can we actually learn from this story? The survival of Rolls-Royce isn't just about bypass ratios or thrust. It's about sheer corporate resilience and visionary leadership. A single graduate apprentice looked at a Bandrick giant and over 6 decades engineered a remarkable global powerhouse through bold gambles, painful sacrifices, and brilliant architecture. But it leaves us with a lingering question. As aviation pushes toward radical new technologies like hydrogen and electric propulsion, who will be the next apprentice to step up and save a dying giant? Thanks for watching Airflight Space. If you found this video informative, leave a like. Subscribe for more aviation investigations and stories. Share your thoughts below. I regularly read and interact with the community. See you in the next video.